My name's Jim. I'm an alcoholic. Hi, everybody. I'm glad to be here tonight. Happy to see all of you here. Now then, our joke maven, Audrey, also came armed with a joke tonight. Seems this drunk was gotten himself totally wasted. He was out stumbling down the street, and he falls into an excavation, and he darn near kills himself. Finally, he comes crawling out, and he feels this liquid running down his leg. And he said, "Oh God, let that be blood." Groan. The what? Back pocket? Oh, that's right. Oh man. Oh God. Audrey, I promise not ever to butcher another one of your jokes like that, okay? We've come to depend on them. Okay, this is a big book meeting. In case if you're visiting and you wonder what's going on here. And we've been going through the big book together very slowly. But we're trying to read it and understand it and get all the meat out of it. So tonight we're going to be continuing our reading and look at the 7th chapter. And we will be starting. Who has what? 97, yeah.
First paragraph, never avoid these responsibilities.
Very good, thank you. Because somebody told me that we didn't get to 96 last time, and I remember we did that 96 joke, didn't we? Yeah. Okay. There were probably a few people that hadn't heard it, but we're going on to page 97. Now, before we get into the reading, let's just recap briefly. Remember that this chapter is the chapter which tells us, initially, the first 7-8 pages, how to work with a newcomer. And it's very, very important stuff because, well, if you hang around in meetings at all, you see a lot of people, new people come in, and many times they come in and they sit and they announce themselves and then they're gone. And really nobody has made a move to help them. And I don't think it's because we don't care, but maybe we don't really know how to go about helping somebody new. And the big book tells us exactly how to do that. It's all written out for us. All the directions are there. Just to recap very briefly, we tell them our story, how we drank, what alcohol did to us, how we tried to stop and how we could not stop. We tell them about the powerlessness, the terror, bewilderment, frustration, and despair. We do this because we want them to understand that we know exactly how they feel and what they've been going through. We want to establish our credibility with them. Once having done that, they're still interested. Then we need to tell them about the disease. Dr. Silkworth made that real clear with Bill when Bill was first starting out. He said, hit him with a sledgehammer. Tell him, this disease is a killer. And if you're a real alcoholic, you either stop drinking or you're going to die. Make sure they understand that. It's progressive and there's no cure for it. And when Bill started doing that, that's when AA started to come together. So we're to do that, and we're also to explain to them that this disease is also a disease of the mind, and that there is this overwhelming obsession, compulsion to drink alcohol over which we have no power. In other words, that the powerlessness of the first step relates to our inability to not drink, no matter how strong our motivation may be. If they're still interested, then we tell them precisely how we have recovered, and we stress the spiritual freely. Then we tell them a little bit about the fellowship, and then if they're still interested, we give them the big book. Tell them to read the book. Not part of the book, remember, the book, the whole book. Why? I mean, the modern day thinking on this is let their sponsor figure out the first couple, 3 chapters, have them read that, get them started gently along. Don't push them too much. They don't have to get sober by Tuesday. And maybe somewhere down the line they might even, if you're real lucky, or if they're real lucky, they might even actually read the book. That's not the directions. The directions are, if you're new, you read the whole book. Why? Well, it's very simple. The book was written for the new person. Every word in it, every page is there for the new person to read. Absolutely essential that we do that if we want to cover every possibility of the book being helpful to us, because it's going to help us overcome our denial. It's going to allow us to identify ourselves with the people in the book. And by the way, they're real people. This is not some kind of a philosophy. It's not any kind of guesswork or opinion. It is real people, real experiences. It is a history of what happened. And the stories in the back of the book, each and every one of them is likely to be that one place where the new person will really identify themselves. And what happens is they say, well, I'm just like that. Maybe I'm one of you too. And not only that, but the stories in the big book, and the stories in the first part of the big book and the stories in the back, all of them end up with sobriety. The purpose here, of course, is to show the new person that, yes, indeed, there is a solution. And what does this do? It brings them hope. So, the book will help them conquer the denial, and it will help them to have hope. That they are alcoholics, yes, indeed, but that there is hope of recovery. And it's on those twin peaks that we have, the big book was built. It was written initially for that purpose, to carry that message to people who would not otherwise ever hear it. So the new person is asked to read the book. Last week we found out what happens. The book has been read. At the second meeting with this new person who has read the book, we ask them if they want what we have, and are they willing to go to any lengths to get it. And if they say yes, we offer to take them through the steps. At the second meeting. You see, when we read the book, we realize that these people did not mess around. They didn't have any of this, go to meetings for 90 days and then I'll tell you if you're ready. Or let's be sober a year and then we'll see whether you're ready to work the steps. The truth of the matter is that even as late as when I came in '64, the rule was 9 steps in 90 days or less. And that was stretching it. Because everybody then realized that it was not a question of how long you stretched out the steps. That wasn't going to make them better or make them work better, because the grace and the miracles are contained in the steps themselves. So when we work the steps, we get the results. We get the promises. I think I told you that last summer I took a man through steps in 6 days who was visiting here from London. He's doing beautifully well. Beautifully well. I hear from him once a month. And that's not at all unusual. In those early days, Dr. Bob took people through the steps in 1 day. Bill Wilson, in his story, let us see that he worked the steps while he was still in the hospital for the last time. So what in the world's the matter with us anyway, that we can't get this message? And somehow or another we have to drag it out and drag it out and drag it out. I talked to a lady the other day who's been working on her 4th step for 9 months. And I said, what in the world are you doing? Well, she had all this work that her sponsor gave her to do. Masses and she's got 2 full notebooks for a 4th step. And I said, well, how can you possibly do that? If you open the book up and read it, you see what you have to do. There's some questions to answer about certain aspects of your life. There is nowhere in this book that says you're supposed to write your autobiography. The 4th step is looking for very, very, very specific things. Resentments, dishonesty, selfishness, and fear, and those we have harmed. That's it. And the fourth step is designed specifically like a rapier to go boom, 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 and hit those four. And when we get to the 10th step, we go right back and we look for those four again. We get to the 11th step, we go right back and look for those four again, because those are the cardinal defects. Everything else flows through them or around them. Not a word in the big book about sin. Doesn't even exist in the big book. We don't deal with sin here. Doesn't matter what other literature says. We're looking at twists and turns of our mind. Twists and turns of our natural God-given instincts, warped and perverted by fear. That's what we're looking for. And the steps are there, and they work perfectly. Millions of recovered alcoholics can't be wrong. Why are we fighting with this stuff? Why do we think we have to go do some weird stuff out there just to prove we're different or we're smarter or something? I don't know. Maybe it's because we want to sell stuff. I have that sneaking suspicion there's that motive too. In any event, we take them immediately to steps. If they don't want to work with us, we suggest they find somebody else to work with right away. It says this: let them know you are available. If he wishes to make a decision, tell the story, but do not insist upon it if he prefers to consult someone else. So here's where we are. We've worked with this new person. We're now working with him. Hopefully we're working with him or her on his or her steps. And they're willing. They're ready. The big book says if he is to find God, the desire must come from within. We can't make this happen, but if it's there, then we're going to foster it. We're going to run with it. We're going to say, okay, let's get to work. When people come to me and ask me for help, you know what I tell them? Here's the deal. You're going to make a commitment to me, and I'll make a commitment to you. I'm going to show you what to do, and you're going to do it. And you're not going to drag your feet. And you're not going to come up with a bunch of excuses. You're just going to do it. And I commit to you that I'll show you every step of the way exactly what you're doing and why you're doing it and where it is in the book. And if you'll do that, I promise you that you'll be fine. You'll be just fine. I can look you in the eye and tell you that because I know it's true. Now with that commitment, we go blazing forward. We get it done. And I've taken well over 2,000 people through the steps right now, up to this point. And boy, I've found that that really works well, because we have an understanding right up front that I'm not there as a banker or a housing authority. I happen to be a lawyer, but I'm not there as a lawyer. I'm there as a teacher of the steps, a spiritual guide. And they're there to get sober and to find a spiritual awakening through the working of the 12 steps. And we are going to work together to get that done. That's it. And the thing is this: if we're looking for friends, I've heard it say, well, your sponsor's got to be your best friend. Balderdash. Total nonsense. You know what happens every once in a while? Every once in a while you get really lucky, don't you, Kathy? And somebody becomes a friend. But that's just a blessing. You know, that's a wonderful thing that happens just occasionally. When it does, you say, thank you, God, this is great. I've got another friend. Most of the people we work with, they come and they go, and we turn them loose because we're not going to let anybody become dependent upon us. Anybody. I don't care if you're my dearest friend. You start showing dependency on me, I'm going to tell you right now, let's stop this. Because we got to depend on God, don't we? We've got to put our dependency on God. And when we forget that, we start slipping back. Okay, enough editorializing. Now then, we're talking now about how we're going to go forward with this person that we're helping. On top of page 97, we got to read the paragraph before in order to know what this paragraph is referring to. So let's go back on 96, last partial paragraph on 96. He may be broke and homeless. If he is, you might try to help him about getting a job or give him a little financial assistance. Notice the word give there. It does not say lend. One of the most dastardly things you can do in this fellowship is lend anybody money. You know why, don't you? You probably won't see them again. They'll be ducking out on you, and you're going to be pissed off. So what you do is you say, here's $10, pass it on. Pass it on. Let it go. But you should not deprive your family or creditors of money they should have. Perhaps you'll want to take the man into your home for a few days. But be sure you use discretion. Be certain he will be welcomed by your family and that he is not trying to impose upon you for money, connections, or shelter. Well, family, that's one way of putting it. I was living in a rented room out here in the West Broward somewhere. I called it the Hole. And the place was owned by a friend of mine, used to be a friend of mine, who's in the program, and I never knew when I came home at night who would be sleeping on the couch. And you could not imagine the parade of people that came through there, and I knew that as soon as I saw one of those people on the couch, that whatever food I had in the refrigerator was gone. And I had never left any money laying around my room because there was no lock on the door. And when I used to say to them, why do you bring these people home here? You know, I live here too. Why not at least ask me about it? Oh, well, got to be kind and loving. You see, but there was a key to all this. Every one of those people was a female. So finally, I got the hell out of there as quick as I could. Be certain he will be welcomed, that he is not trying to impose upon you for money, connections, or shelter. And here's the key to that. Permit that you only harm him. You will be making it possible for him to be insincere. You may be aiding in his destruction rather than his recovery. And of course, this is what we call today, what? Enabling, right? And boy, that's a hard one sometimes. Where do you know, it's hard to know where to draw the line. I know that we can use our best judgment, we can go with our instincts, and sometimes we're going to make mistakes along that line, but personally I'd rather make a mistake on the side of being a little bit tougher than a little bit more feeling, you know, because feelings get me in trouble. I am not my feelings. I'm spirit, and sometimes feelings just overwhelm you, but what I found is that when faced with the certainty of a night under the stars or under the rain clouds or whatever, there's a great tendency to start looking for some way to make a couple of bucks, maybe even to begin to help oneself. And so I would prefer to see that happen. Every once in a while I give in. Never avoid these responsibilities, but you be sure that you're doing the right thing if you assume them. Helping others is the foundation stone of your recovery. A kindly act once in a while isn't enough. You have to act the Good Samaritan every day if need be. Well, this Good Samaritan stuff, of course, goes along, doesn't it, with the fact that we're here to be helpful. And of course, we want to be helpful in any way that we can. But the problem here is to balance it out a little bit so that and I know people who spend their whole time in sobriety, and usually that's pretty short, doing nothing but run people back and forth to meetings, being at their beck and call. As soon as they call up, I'll spend 2 hours listening to your sad story and so on. but nothing's happening there. See, there's no dynamic there, because the big book tells us what has to be happening. That both you and the new man must be walking day by day in the path of spiritual progress. Now, spiritual progress is something which is going to come about because we are working the steps, because we are teaching the steps, because we are being a spiritual advisor, not a taxi service. And there's nothing wrong with carrying people to meetings now and then. But the problem is, you see, here's what happens. The modern idea in New Age AA today seems to be that you stay recovered if you clean ashtrays, make the coffee, greet at the door, carry people to meetings, this kind of stuff. And it's wonderful stuff to do. Kathy will tell you nobody stays sober around here just by coming in once a week on Saturday and mopping the floor, even though the floor needs to get mopped. Because you see, carrying the message to other alcoholics doesn't mean anything like that. It means carrying the message, which is the message of the steps. That's what we have to do. So whatever else we're doing, we got to remember that our primary purpose here is to carry these steps, to teach these steps to the new people. And we need to be sure that they're willing to do that. It may mean the loss of many nights' sleep, great interference with your pleasures, interruptions to your business. It may mean sharing your money in your home, counseling frantic wives and relatives, innumerable trips to police courts, sanitariums, hospitals, jails, and asylums. Telephone may jangle any time of the day or night. Listen to that jangle. How long has it been since any of you have heard a telephone jangle? Did you ever? Probably not. We got this little soft buzz on our new phone system at my new office. I can hardly hear that sucker. Beep, beep, beep. I don't know. It sounds like some kind of a, mechanical midget or something sitting there. Anyway, I'm not used to that. I had to figure out that was my phone. And then, if you got a cell phone, you really can't tell the difference between them. You're digging in your pocket, you're looking at your phone, and they're looking at your partner's phone. Whose phone is that anyway? Didn't used to be that problem. The only phone we had in the house was down in the center hall. You hung up the earpiece on this thing like this. You pulled it close like this, and then down here was a dial. And it was always a party line. You ever have a party line? Yes. Did you? You know, Kath. Get off the line. Oh, I'm talking to Aunt Elizabeth. This will take at least another half hour. This is important. Oh, God, 4 party line. That was a nightmare. Anyway. Your telephone may jangle any time of day or night. Your wife may sometimes say she is neglected. That'll happen. A drunk may smash the furniture in your home or burn a mattress. That happened to Bill. You may have to fight with him if he's violent. Sometimes you'll have to call a doctor and administer sedatives under his direction. Another time you may have to send for the police or an ambulance. Well, that happens a lot. Occasionally you'll have to meet such conditions. Now, when you read this paragraph, you realize just how far we've come societally in this approach to the treatment of alcoholism, because when this was written, there weren't any detox centers around. The occasional hospital might take somebody in and stick some chloral hydrate in them until they zombied out, and then put them back on the street. And then if you wanted to, if you really wanted to get into some kind of treatment like Dr. Silkworth offered, that was expensive as hell. Those drying out places were very expensive, and that was pretty much for the elite. Today, you know what happens today? Most of the time, somebody calls and they want to get sober and they're drunk right now and they're ready to quit. First thing that goes through your mind: where's the nearest detox? Well, that's not such a bad idea, really. We used to carry booze around in our hip pocket. That's right in our hip pocket, but we weren't drunk. Why? Because you don't want them to die on you. I remember it was always Old Granddad. You ever see Old Granddad? Whiskey? Yeah, you've been around a while, Chris. Old Granddad. Old Granddad and, yeah. Old Drum, that was another one. Anyway, carry around Old Granddad, and then when they started to flip on you, you'd stick some of that in. But today we can get them to a detox center, and then they get 3 or 4 days of drying out, and then maybe there's some way to. And you know, we don't even really want to work with them then. We've gotten so damn lazy. We'll try to get them into a treatment center somewhere. They can be warehoused for another 30 days. And after they come out of there and they're all zombied out on meds, and then we try to work with them. You got to. It's an adventure, you know. You need to have a shaking it out drunk on your couch. We used to have. I guess they're still in some parts of the country. They still have Al-Anon, or not Al-Anon. What are they called? Well, anyway, it's a club like this, like any AA club, but they're open 24 hours, and they always have some couches or cots in the back room, and this is where people shake it out. And then when you go there, you'll find the 2 or 3 sober people sitting with them, sitting up with them, holding their hands. Sometimes it takes 3 or 4 days, and if everybody's real lucky, they don't die. So we don't really go through this much anymore. In fact, the matter is, probably most of you have never been on a 12-step call, or at least in the last year or two. And that was all the time. All the time. Well, Audrey remembers. And that was just part of sobriety, going on 12-step calls. Not so much anymore. And we've got these crazy ideas that we have to be 2 people to go and all that. Nobody thought anything of going on a 12-step call by themselves. Big Book tells us that we can go to the most sordid spot on earth and be perfectly safe as long as we're there on God's business. Anyway, on 97 again, we seldom allow an alcoholic to live in our homes for a long time. It's not good for them, and sometimes creates serious complications in a family, as well it should. Though an alcoholic does not respond, there is no reason why you should neglect his family. See, we go back to this over and over again. Wait till we get into chapters 8 and 9. You're going to get tired of hearing me yap about this. But when this book was written, they realized that this is a family disease. It wasn't the disease exclusively of the alcoholic, far from it. The families were very intimately involved in recovery. A chapter to wives is a perfect illustration of that, and the family afterward. Not only were the husbands or wives brought in, but the kids were involved with prayer and meditation, and everybody got into the spiritual recovery. And they knew because they experienced it. When that happened, the chances for the alcoholic were so much greater. They didn't have any of these closed meetings or anything. The families were welcome at all times. I remember I did the Big Book down at South Dade Room a few years ago, and I was harping on this for a long time. Finally, we got through the Big Book. They asked if we could take that same night and make it a family night, and so we did. And as far as I know, they're still doing it. I think it's Wednesday night. Every Wednesday night, 8:30, the families are invited to come, and it turned out to be a really, really popular meeting, something that's helped a lot of people. So there's no reason to neglect his family. Continue to be friendly with them. You got to ask yourself how, if especially you people have been around here for a while and you're doing a lot of 12-step work. Do you really know anything about the families? Have we gotten involved with the families at all? Do we even think about the families? Of course, South Florida, it's such a fragmented society here that So many people are from somewhere else and families are nowhere around. But the book is right. We need to look at this as a family disease, and when we're working with our sponsees, for example, it's really helpful if we know the background, what they came out of, not just their bitching, moaning, and complaining that they do when they're doing their four-step or when they get upset, but the real story. It's very helpful to us. It gives us a whole lot more background and be able to be helpful to them. The family should be offered your way of life. Now, you see, what this is saying is, here is the alcoholic over here who is kind of standing aside, not willing to respond to what you want to give him. He said, nevertheless, help his family. Help the family to develop a life based on spiritual principles. There's a much better chance that the head of the family will recover, because he will see what's happening. Things will change. And when we get into chapter the wives, it's going to show us how much better the whole family situation is when the wife understands her role and how she needs to conduct herself and how she needs to practice a spiritual way of life herself. Because when she does that, it smooths the way for the drunk husband to come on in. Instead of having constant bitterness and fighting, she becomes an example to him of God working in her life without being obtrusive about it, without being a nag. But now he begins to get the idea this would be so much better than what we've had. And even though he continues to drink, the family will find life more bearable. One of the main themes of chapter 8, by the way, is something rather surprising. Today we just say, well, get rid of the bastard, Get a divorce, get out of it, you don't need to stay with him. They didn't say that at all. They said you can still be happy. You don't have to get rid of him. You and the kids can still be happy. Because why? Because you're going to get on a spiritual path and stay there, and you're going to have God on your side, and you're going to let him do as he must. You learn to stand on your own 2 feet, and you can be happy when today you're miserable. And this is a pretty bitter pill to swallow for people who have been absolutely validated by everybody around them in their belief that they're the most abused people on earth. That this is the most terrible situation. No wonder you feel so bad. Look what he's doing to you. And on and on and on and on. The same kind of stuff that the human solutionists pull on us all the time. No wonder you drank. Look what they did to you. Look at the circumstances of your birth. From there on, this dysfunctional family. Everybody who has a dysfunctional family is going to be a drinker. Well, of course, that's nonsense, isn't it? Remember that book I told you about? Came out about 7, 8 years ago. Right after dysfunctional families were discovered by the people who practice the human solution. This book said, the title of the book was, I'm dysfunctional, you're dysfunctional, we're all dysfunctional. Right! It's exactly right. That was a pretty neat title. It was in red cover with a blue stripe. Keep that in mind, Arthur. That's the way you sell books. One of my dear friends who's here tonight is in the book publishing business. Okay. It's at least got to be a red cover, a lot of red on it. Draw people's eyes immediately to it. All right, bottom of page 97. What are we doing here tonight? I don't even know what I'm doing. I'm having fun. I hope you are too. We don't take ourselves too damn seriously around here, We take this seriously, though. For the type of alcoholic who is able and willing to get well, ooh, listen to that, able and willing. Now, what would it be that would disable somebody from getting well. We know if we listen to chapter 5 being read, we know what that is. The first paragraph in chapter 5, how it works. Those who do not recover are people who cannot or will not completely give themselves to this simple program. Usually men and women who are constitutionally incapable of being honest with themselves. So now we know what this cannot means. And that's the bottom line. Excuse my dragging in your name, but it's the bottom line. If we can't be honest with ourselves, we don't recover. If we cannot or will not accept the basic tenets of this simple program, we don't recover. How much more what more do we have to know, for goodness sakes? So the alcoholic we're looking for the type who is able and willing to get well. Willingness here means, in the initial stages, just exactly what the Big Book has told us before. That if he is to find God, the desire must come from within. Or, to put another way, if you want what we have and are willing to go to any length to get it, then you're ready to take certain steps. So, able and willing to get well, we owe them little charity, in the ordinary sense of the word, is needed or wanted. The men who cry for money and shelter before conquering alcohol are on a wrong track. There's a line in the 9th chapter. We might want to take a look at that, because this falls right in line with what we're just talking about here. Page 127. Remember what we just read. Men who cry for money and shelter before conquering alcohol on the wrong track. Page 127, the first full paragraph, it's almost halfway down the middle of the page. Although financial recovery is on the way for many of us, we found we could not place money first. And here's the rule. For us, material well-being always followed spiritual progress, never preceded. We got to keep that in mind, because there's a siren song, and we hear it all the time. If I could just get a job, if I could just get my car back, if I could just get my lady friend back, if I could just get my family to accept me again, if I could just get my kids back, if I could just have enough money, if I could just have some clothes other than wearing my wardrobe around, then I could get sober. What they don't stop to realize is the only reason they're even willing to talk about getting sober is because they're exactly in that condition. This is why they're here. This is the bottom of sorts. And so we're not going to pander to that idea. Yet we do go to great extremes to provide each other with these very things when such action is warranted. That's true. You know what happens in AA is a wonderful thing. After a while, you get to know people, and you get to care about them, and you get to love them. And sometimes they have a tough time here and there. Maybe it's money, maybe it's a place to live, maybe it's just to need somebody to talk to. And we freely give of that. Freely. As we should. And there's something about what happens here, this kind of internal caring. It's kind of like a big beating heart to say boom, boom, boom. And inside that heart, nobody's going to go hungry. And nobody's going to go without a bed. It's a wonderful thing, And so we go to great extremes to provide each other with these very things when such action is warranted. This may seem inconsistent, but we think it's not. And it's not at all. But notice there's something going on here. We talk about that it being wrong to take people's inventory, that it'd be wrong for us to be judging. But you know, I don't think there's a bloody thing in the world wrong with being discriminating. We cannot blind ourselves. We ought not to blind ourselves to reality. And there are people who are just plain evil. There are people who float from area to area, especially in a resort area, who are AA hobos. And they come around till they wear out their welcome, they move on to the next place. They're not getting any help. They don't want any help. They want to live off the land the best way they know. I guess every once in a while one of them sees the light. I hope so. But you know, when we get to know each other and we've had an opportunity to watch what people do, by your actions you'll be known, not by your words. Words are, anybody can say the words. Anybody can sit in here and after a few months have everything memorized, all the buzzwords, all the pretty ideas, all that stuff, and can get up here and sound as if they've been around for years and they're so spiritual and they're so great and there's so much recovery there. I promise you, you wouldn't want to be in their shoes for 10 minutes. And so we don't, it's nice to hear, but we watch what people do. By your actions you'll be known. That's exactly what the big book tells us in the third step. God, take away my difficulties, that victory over them may bear witness to those I would help of thy love, thy power, and thy way of life. That is, let me demonstrate, God, through my life, your power working in and through me so that I can be helpful to them. And this recognizes that what's really going on here, if you want to know whether someone you can trust, someone that you want to make special efforts to be friends with or include in your support group or whatever, watch what they do, not what they say. Words are the easiest part of the talents that God has given us. You know what's hard? To be consistent in following your words with action. That's what's hard. But there are people who do it. Many. AA is full of absolutely marvelous people. All different. Most of us are goofy sometimes. We got all little quirks and peccadillos, but never mind. The heart is good. The heart is very good. And so we get to know the heart of the people, especially when we watch them and we see what they do, and we know that they are not just talking about being helpful. They spend time and effort, and they're willing to sacrifice to be helpful to others. You watch for that. When you see that, say, yeah, there's a good person. AA is full of God's good people. And then when we stop worrying about what they say, we begin to watch what they do, and we find those good people, you see. Sometimes the words don't ring true with us. Sometimes we don't like what we hear. But let's watch what they do. Then we'll know. Okay, I don't know where the time goes. You guys, you probably are being too nice to me, letting me ramble around like this. But anyway, this next paragraph, I'd like to just hit on this, and then we'll come back next week and look at it very closely. Page 98, first full paragraph. It is not the matter of giving that is in question, but when and how to give. That often makes the difference between failure and success. The minute we put our work on a service plane, the alcoholic commences to rely upon our assistance rather than upon God. You see, here the use of the word service is like being a servant. This is not service that we sometimes talk about around here where we're carrying the message. This is service as being a servant. The alcoholic commences to rely upon our assistance rather than upon God, which is fatal. He clamors for this or that, claiming he cannot master alcohol until his material needs are cared for. Nonsense. By the way, that's the shortest sentence in the big book for you trivia buffs. It's only 8 letters. On page 45, obviously, is not the shortest sentence. That's 9 letters. Some of us have taken very hard knocks to learn this truth. Job or no job, wife or no wife, we simply do not stop drinking so long as we place dependence upon other people ahead of dependence on God. Boy, you can burn that one into your forehead. We simply do not stop drinking so long as we place dependence upon other people ahead of dependence on God. And all of these warnings that we just been reading about really are going to this one single point. If you're going to be helpful to somebody, never do it in such a way that you allow them to become dependent upon you. Because the moment you do that, you've defeated the whole purpose of helping them. Burn the idea in the conscience of every man that he can get well regardless of anyone. The only condition is you trust in God and clean house. Period. This is such a simple program, guys. It's so bloody simple. Take the steps and work and go from a place of rebellion and defiance and denial to a place of surrender and obedience. Find a power greater than yourself, surrender to that power, and do the will of that power. Clean up the wreckage of your past. Make amends where you need to. And then stay close to God for the rest of your life. Stay in God's pocket. You want to know how simple this program is? Every day you go to a meeting. That's where you're going to find the people who need help. And incidentally, where your help will come from, because it has to go both ways. You get to a meeting every day, you pray, you meditate, you take inventory, and you work with other people. You do those 5 things every day, you quit worrying about anything else. Thanks very much.